Welcome to Know Your Food, the podcast where we explore the world of food by speaking with farmers, makers, entrepreneurs, and experts who are reshaping how we think about what we eat. I'm your host, Michael Ray Robinoff, CEO and co-founder of Farm to People, and we're recording these conversations live from our warehouse in Bushwick, Brooklyn. In today's episode, I sit down with Nialls Fallon and Leah Campbell, two-thirds of the team behind Minnow, a tinned seafood brand bringing high-quality, responsibly sourced fish to American pantries. You may also know them from their beloved New York restaurants, Hart's, The Fly, Cervo's, and Eel Bar. We discuss why Americans have such a hard time cooking seafood, how Europe's tradition of preserving peak season catch inspired Minnow, and why sourcing directly from canneries matters for quality and sustainability. Nialls and Leah also share the behind-the-scenes journey of launching their brand, from pandemic pivots to entering independent shops and now preparing for a major grocery launch. If you've ever wondered what makes one tin of fish so much better than another, or how to build a brand without compromising your values, this is an episode for you. Thanks for tuning in to Know Your Food. If you enjoyed today's episode, please leave us a review and share it with a friend who loves good food. Now, here's my conversation with Nialls and Leah from Minnow. Thank you so much, Nialls. Thank you so much, Leah, for being here. Before we jump into the questions, I just first want to be a fanboy for a second. I've long loved your restaurants. Yeah, remember visiting Hart's first, and then Cervo's, and then obviously congrats on Eel Bar, and even the latest news of a new spot coming to, what is it, the Prospect Heights?
The corner of Prospect Heights and Crown Heights. Thank you all so much for coming. It's so good to be here.
I guess, continuing our theme tonight, you started in restaurants. I think, why don't you both, I know you've come together with these four restaurants, but you both kind of met through other past even restaurant lives. If you could go into a little bit the co-founder story and how you both came to connect, and we'll get to Minnow in a second, but I just think, set the scene.
Yeah, so Leah and myself and our third partner, Nick, all worked together at Marlowe & Sons and Diner on that corner in Williamsburg many years ago, 2010, 11 and change, and became very close friends working there. We all kind of had our own different backgrounds. Nick worked in the kitchen as a chef. I worked in the front of house, bartending at the time, and Leah was more back of house, HR world. And yeah, we became friends first. We're the exception that are still very close friends and spend a lot of time together outside of the workplace. But I had left Marlowe & Diner to open up a bar in the East Village, which our focus was tinned seafood, of all things. We didn't have a kitchen. We just had a little, sandwich lowboy that we would kind of make sandwiches and salads out of, but we really wanted a seafood theme. And so we stocked the bar with tinned seafood as an easy way for, a bartender to pop something open. And during that time of running my own bar, Nick, Lee, and I were talking a lot about wanting to do something together, the three of us, and we're looked for spaces for 2 years. And right as I was leaving my bar project, we found what became Hart's and decided to all partner together and open that together. And so since then, we've, opened 3 more restaurants together.
Incredible. And I think, it's such a kind of wonderful concept, and you were sort of the first. I remember that restaurant, I think, was on Tompkins Square Park, right?
Yeah, it's called Maiden Lane. It's still there, but my former business partner runs it.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, just the idea of, if you're in Europe, Portugal, I feel like that's a classic dinner where you can go drink amazing wine, and they'll just bring you bread and tinned fish throughout the night. And to bring that to New York, I think you were maybe the first. So.
He was.
Yeah, it was 2013 when we opened, so we were definitely the first tinned seafood bar in the country, and it was maybe ahead of its time. There's, a big learning curve for our clientele to understand what we were thinking and doing. But now, 12 years later, it's very popular in the States, so there are many, many wine bars serving tinned seafood. And
yeah, so then moving on to tinned seafood, I think tinned seafood tinned seafood in America is undergoing somewhat of a renaissance. I think if you think about tinned seafood in this country historically, it's been kind of like this afterthought, this sort of like tuna fish salad, this sort of, I guess, deli staple, but not certainly like a premium, it doesn't really have like a premium ring to it in the sense of how we all probably grew up in eating it here. Obviously, you saw something there that made you think about it on the restaurant level. What then in I think it was 2020 or 2021 made you think, well, wait, we want to actually not just import it and do a bar, but like create our own brand and change the culture around the quality that we're seeing on the shelf when it comes to tinned seafood?
Well, that was the pandemic. During that time, we had closed our restaurants to dining, of course, indoor dining, and had converted them all to be retail shops. So we were selling shelf-stable goods like 5-liter container of olive oil and canned seafood and things like that, but we were also making things that we used to make for our restaurant menus. So small containers of ricotta cheese, and we bottled our hot sauce and made salad dressings, and we were selling fresh bread and all of these things. And we...
It's a kind of common story, but I think that the early days of the pandemic, Nick Nialls and I sat in the dining rooms and they were empty, and we looked around and just thought, could we sell what we have? Like the bills were coming due, and as we were just talking about, like smaller local food systems are relationship-based, they're people-based, and they're in many ways more nimble. The fragility and the sort of humanity of them, not that there isn't fragility and humanity, of course, in those bigger food systems, but the relationship we have with the chicken farmer. I mean, at The Fly, we have a rotisserie chicken restaurant. It's called The Fly. The first week of The Fly, it kind of reminds me of your story, Hannah, of like the first days of Mimi Chang's, like where you're just like, oh shit, we don't have enough broccoli. Like we were like, had to call the chicken farmer and be like, how quickly can you grow a chicken?
We need a lot more every
right,
day.
We need a lot more than we thought we did. And so similarly, the pandemic happens and you're like, there are chickens coming. And also, more importantly, there are just a tremendous amount of people who are part of that whole process of getting the chickens to you. And so it just didn't occur to us, even in a way, to like that process could stop, even though the restaurants had utterly closed. So there were, a couple things that felt really obvious that were like, we literally just started packaging what was in the walk-ins into the pint containers that we had on hand and selling that to people who were coming to like buy wine. And then we just thought, well, we could keep making things. And then of course, like we couldn't make that much. We were a smaller team at that point. And so we were then starting to buy things that we liked, tinned fish. So we were selling other people's tinned fish. And Nialls had always, I'll let you tell your own story about this, but Nialls had always had this dream of Minnow. And maybe I'll tell your story for you. So, okay. So when he was running the bar, he was getting really into this. Nialls was like a crazy researcher. Like before we came over here, Nialls was telling me about gardening in his backyard, and he was telling me about his approach to gardening. It's just deeply research-based. And that's just like the kind of guy he is. So he had, when running the bar, just been looking for the best quality sustainable seafood in tins that he could find. And he was finding a lot, but he wasn't able to bring it in. He wasn't able to get it. And he was like, this is crazy. There's so many people who would love this. But he started basically figuring out how to import tinned seafood so that he could have it. There's no one else who was doing it for these brands that he knew would be delicious. And that's where the idea of Minnow really was born. And so then, years later, we're in the pandemic. We're in the shops. We turned each of our restaurants into shops to try to keep all of them, all the doors open and all the lights on. And we would rotate. We were like little cashiers who would move, and we'd be like, hey, we're here on Tuesday. And then we'd be like, we'll see you over in the, other shop on Thursday. But it would just be us, like moving between the restaurants. And then, but we're having these tremendously beautiful conversations with our guests, now our shoppers, about what to cook, how to cook it, the way that they like to cook it. That would then like carry over into Instagram. We'd be in the DMs. It got incredibly personal sometimes. Like, I miss my mom's cooking. I miss my my best friend. Like, she used to make this. Like, how would you do that? And anyway, we were having this totally new relationship with people that we had, formerly seen for an hour and a half for dinner. We now were seeing in this completely different way. And
yeah, I think something to note there is that we in the few first days that we were closed, we really decided, we were like, we're not a takeout restaurant. The Fly is the only one that you've ever been able to get takeout from or delivery. Our menus are hyper seasonal, locally sourced. There's certainly anchors that stay on the menu and don't change, but
like tuna crudo at Hart's, like that is a weird one to get takeout in a box.
And so when we closed, we were just like, we're not the takeout people. How are we going to change here? And so the types of things we were selling in the shop it was that chicken, but we didn't cook it. We would season it perfectly with salt and our spice rub that the chefs would make, and we'd put it in a bag, and then we'd give you instructions on how to roast it at home and what temperature and for how long, and we'd give you a little container of jus that you could pour in the roasting pan. And so it was a little, there were things that were in a can or ready to eat, but there were a lot of things that were raw. Cervo was doing a lot of whole fish, and we were showing a lot of people in their Lower East Side apartment how to fillet this fish and cook it, which they probably don't do normally. And so it retained an element for us that we care so much about, which is hospitality and people. Totally. And we weren't handing it off to a driver who would disappear and we'd never hear about it again. We were really intimately talking to our customers. And so it was both selling tin seafood and realizing that there was still a voice to be had in the tin seafood market in the U.S. that we didn't feel that we felt we could be that voice and be bringing in things that we thought were hard to find or particularly unique. But it was also, we really enjoyed being in people's kitchens in a way that we're not when we're working service in the restaurant. In the restaurant, someone's like, what's the ricotta dish like? And you tell them about it. But when you give something to someone to take into their pantry, they're like, what do I do with this? How do I make it at home? I'm throwing a party, or I want to incorporate this into lunch. And so it really brought us into that conversation in a way that had almost been lost in the pandemic. And then when we reopened, we were like, oh, it's great. Everyone's back in here dining with us. But we kind of miss being in their kitchens at home. And so Minnow really provided an outlet for us to kind of keep that.
There's something I love about the products that you have as well, which they're simple. They're really just like the fish in oil with maybe some salt. And that's the simplicity of that also allows someone to go on their own adventure and to take the trout in any direction you want or the salmon in any direction that you want. Was that a purposeful choice?
Totally, yeah. It's protein, and protein doesn't have to be the star of, every meal, but I think we were really clear that, you could put this in a curry, or you could put this on toast, or you could put this, in noodles, or you could put this on a rice bowl, and we were excited about letting the quality of the fish that we had in the tins. And I grew up eating tuna melts with my family, so I don't know, I won't knock tuna. It's still, I think it's 85% of the market of tin fish in America. So it's, we're leaving a lot on the table by not having tuna. We have 5 SKUs, so salmon, sardines, cod liver, the trout, and mussels. Mussels is the one SKU that does have a sauce. It's in escabeche, which is like a sort of vinegar, olive oil, paprika, spices mix. The mussels need a little sauce, okay? But other than that, everything else is really meant to, we were kind of, we wanted to bring restaurant quality fish, restaurant quality sustainable fish to cooks at home. And we didn't want to tell them how they should or what they should cook for the most part. That was what was so cool about being markets, was that we had lots of ideas about what we were putting out there for people, and then they would come back and be like, I'm doing this, and we'd be like, cool.
Wow, yeah.
All right.
They'd post on Instagram what they were making and tag us, and it was just, we always knew that our clientele was diverse, but they were usually coming from the type of food we had, and then watching them make food at home, it was like, wow, this is so different than what we would have come up with. And
we also kind of we do feel like that sets us apart from our competition. I really share Hannah's views, and we share Hannah's views about, we want there to be competition, we want there to be lots of options on the shelf. I feel like, when you taste, basically when people taste our fish, they come back for more. And, we want it, to shine. Yeah. And we also, just to be clear, we don't can fish. We don't catch it and we don't can it. We go out and find canneries around the world that have the rigorous sustainability and then the delicious flavor that match our standards and bring them in as Minnow. We run restaurants. So for us, like, you know, we're very clear that we weren't in a place where we were like, okay, I mean, maybe never say never. It'd be fun to make something, but we were excited about the idea of just really being able to say, like, our work is finding the fish around the world that we know people will love, but they're not getting on grocery shelves, and we can get it to them.
Interesting. So, like, do you rule out finding an amazing tuna and bringing that? Like, was that like a conscious? Like,
it was conscious. It was conscious. Again, never say never. There might come a point where that 85% of the market just starts to feel too exciting for us to pass up. But there is like, and you know, again, there's a race to the bottom, and tuna is the race to the bottom. It's exemplified. Like, it's the cheapest. There's so many options out there, and it's a big fish. And you know, I think there are a lot of people doing that really well, and it's delicious, and I still eat it, and everyone should. And also, we think there are other really good fish options that people should try.
I think that's important. I mean, I think when you think about fish in general, there are a lot of, like, the ocean is largely overfished. There are sustainable choices and less sustainable choices, and being conscious of this is something that I think, you know, largely many people are not or are coming around to. But I think that, like, other underutilized seafood can be fantastic, whether it's putting a fluke on your menu or a mackerel on your menu versus tuna or salmon, which everybody sort of expects. I think there's something to that around, like, also taking that sort of sustainability. Always delicious. I always say this. First and foremost, it has to be delicious.
Yeah,
like, no one, unfortunately, no one's going to pick the sustainable choice if it's disgusting. And we always have to kind of remember that as a base. So it has to be delicious. But then
Life is also for enjoying.
Absolutely. But if you can enjoy and feel good about what you're enjoying, that's when you really can create something that I think transcends an industry and feel really good about it. You're making positive change. So when you think about product development as well, and the SKUs that you started with, the different types of fish, and potential expansion into other types of seafood, does that come into play?
Yes. I mean, sourcing has been an interesting, trip for us. We have, we used to have snails in our line, for instance, escargot.
Anyone remember the snails? That's why there aren't any
Crickets.
snails. Product line.
That was ahead of its time, and maybe always will be for the American palate. Canned snails are
But
very
we tried
popular in Europe. We found this incredible, super tiny farm in Greece that we were working with that was raising
What's cooler than that? I mean, it was like-
sustainable snails and packaging them on site, and they were really beautiful and earthy and very much rivaled the more common ones from Burgundy, and we were super excited about them. We were offering them in a can of 12, whereas most in the United States are packs of 24. We thought that would be,
Snack
easier.
size.
Less snails you got to get through. Yeah.
It didn't work.
So much to be humbled by and starting a business.
So, part of it is,
You can now get snails on the menu at Eel Bar. So you should, if you're interested after this conversation, you should go to our restaurant.
it's, when we're looking, it's not that we're looking for the best things. We're just looking for incredible seafood that we, it's important that it's sustainably sourced. It's important that the cannery is located where the fish is caught so that it's never frozen and it can be packed the moment it's brought in onto the dock. And that creates a really delicious product. But we come across these things, and from a culinary perspective, they're things that we would use in the restaurant. But the problem with the snails is that everyone was just popping it open and trying to eat it out of the can.
And they were like, they were a little off. And we were like, you have to warm them up.
You have to
like,
cook them.
You have to
got,
cook
like,
them.
butter and herbs or
But they were the one
something
SKU that you had to
spicy.
cook.
Yeah.
Which I guess is a bit of customer education as well.
Too much.
People think too much. Too much. I gotta cook.
I think if, a lot of our other products like sardines, for instance.
Yeah.
So many people we talk to are like, my grandpa used to always, for lunch, pop open a can of sardines, eat it with these crackers, put some cream cheese on them, whatever. Like, they have a visceral knowledge or memory, or they grew up with it. Americans haven't grown up with canned snails. Nobody has a grandfather who like cooked canned snails at home in the US, or at least it's a very small percentage. So that didn't go over well. But then, conversely, cod liver in this country has a very negative connotation. Everyone has a grandparent or a parent who they were like, they made me drink cod liver oil and it's disgusting. But it's our second top seller, and it's one of those items that the moment people try it, they're like, oh, this is the most luxurious, delicious thing I've ever had. It's incredible and very unique. So yeah, we're looking for things that are very unique. There has to be enough knowledge around it that people will love it and embrace it and know how to use it.
So, yeah.
Yeah, some fit that bill, some don't.
Yeah. I think going deeper into like what you've learned about like these sort of supply chain, getting even away from sustainability, but sustainability of the business, right? Like you're not working directly with the fishers.
Yeah.
You're working with canneries who you trust their sourcing standards, who the fishermen that they're working with. You are importing, so tariffs do play a factor. Yeah. I think something that's interesting is you have, 5 SKUs, but like where are they all coming from one cannery, or are you dealing with different?
All around the world.
All around the world. So talk about the supply. I think that's so interesting.
So originally, the 3 that we started with, salmon, cod liver, and sardines, you had those relationships from your main lane days. And so the sardines are from Spain, cod liver is from Iceland, and the salmon is from Bristol Bay, Alaska. So Bristol Bay, Alaska is the most sustainable salmon fishery in the world. The folks in Iceland, they basically primarily sell cod fillet to restaurants in Iceland. And then they were like, we have the livers as a byproduct. And so that's how they got into that. And then the sardines is like many generations, sort of legacy cannery. And the trout is actually farmed. It's more sustainable. It's ASC certified, which is like the MSC equivalent for farming in Denmark. Mm-hmm. And what am I forgetting? Oh, the mussels are from Spain.
Yeah, and we do have some new products in the line that are coming from a cannery in Portugal that we're working with. So one of the biggest hurdles we have is there's no consolidation. Like anytime we're shipping something, it's coming from 5 different sources. But it will, again, it kind of came back to our ethos of really wanting the best product from those regions and finding who did them best.
It's kind of like in the restaurants where it would be simpler if we got all our food from one place and we paid one invoice, but instead we have a ton of different invoices from all the different farmers, and some of them are handwritten and some of them are, and that extra labor is worth it because we think that the end result is, we can't argue with it, so.
We should hit up build.com for a sponsorship or something. Scan your invoices into. I'm going to edit that out because I pay them too much. I'm always curious. Going into restaurants is one thing, very, very difficult, capital intensive.
Yeah.
Lots of very, very slim margins, not exactly margins that could necessarily afford you the opportunity to create a CPG brand that then has to deal with all of the different things that come with being a CPG brand and the slotting fee, everything we discussed prior. Talk to us about how you both decided to embark on that, tackle that challenge. Did you raise capital for any of your restaurants along the way? And did that same investor group back you into as you entered the CPG market?
Yeah, more or less. It's a large group. Everyone always is like, you're crazy. You should just have one big investor. But it's all friends and family and lots of people that we met in the industry over the years, small investments. But yeah, you're right. It's capital intensive and it is every time. And we're always like, let's just make sure we're not running a Ponzi scheme. We got to pay people back. It's very important to us. We care really deeply about all the people that are a part of it and have made it possible for us to do this work. So Minnow was the same way. We started small, but we raised, can I just say how much? Yeah. We raised $100K. That's how much we've raised. We're fundraising now, so if anybody knows anybody, we need to, in order to jump into grocery, we need to, bring more capital into the business. But in some ways that sounds like, it doesn't sound small at all. It's a ton of money, but in the CPG world, it's a small
I was
going to
say, it's a crazily, because it is a ton of money for most folks.
Yes, yeah.
It's such a drop in the water compared to like some of what these brands are raising, and just the costs associated and the slim margins and funding marketing and funding, in the worst case, like
We don't have any
star
marketing.
buybacks or what, sorry?
We don't have any marketing. That's how we don't fund it.
Yeah. Well, I
yeah.
think that's also interesting is like this is where I think these are different paths that people are taking
Yeah.
into CPG, partially, I think, due to entrepreneurial creativity and partly out of necessity. I think there's like a really you've built a following and you've built a brand through restaurant. Now you're taking that audience and translating it into something in retail, which I think has the opportunity, if done right, and I think so far you're off to an amazing start, is to be more capital efficient. And I think that's critical always, especially critical, let's call it in the last like 2 or 3 years when the fundraising environment's been, I think less absurd. There was a moment in time there in 2021. We never raised outside capital. There was a moment we maybe could have. We missed that window when we needed money. And I think this is like a classic thing of a lot of businesses. Like when we needed the money, it was unfortunately a really bad time to raise money, which is so much of why businesses go out of business is lack of capital. Probably 80+% of the reason why businesses go out of business is a lack of capital. So I just wanted to provide that sort of like additional background for folks that aren't as familiar with getting into the CPG world. So
and we had a particular, the reason we only raised $100,000 was we had a particular strategy of how we wanted to launch the company, which was none of us had worked in CPG before, but we had all worked in restaurants for our entire lives. Adjacent, but very different business model. We decided to not sell into grocery stores for the first 3 years, to only sell into independent and specialty retailers. So we're in about 300 of those across the country. And our idea was, let's go national, but only sell to these smaller independent retail shops. That's going to give us a ton of feedback on what's working, what's not working, and also like, we know those types of folks. Like, I know if the order arrives damaged, I'm going to get a call from probably one of the owners at the restaurant or the shop, and we're going to be on the other line of that phone. We're going to retain all of the customer service so that we can see what's going on, what's wrong. And
Minnow is us, and then one employee who is also a bartender at Hart's.
yes.
incredible.
Yeah, so we wanted to, a little bit to what Hannah was saying, which is what we do in the restaurants. We've all washed dishes on a given night, and it makes it so much easier to identify when someone isn't being very efficient with washing dishes. You can be like, hey, you really got to do it this way and move this here. And we wanted that same thing with Minnow. We wanted to know every single aspect of the business so that at some point we could translate that to others and run the business more efficiently. We're at that point now. We're also launching in Whole Foods. We'll be in February of 26. And
It's a long time. Lead time.
And we've been in conversations for at least a year now. So
Incredible.
Part of that is because there were some changes in our SKUs. We have some packaging updates that are occurring, but it is, no matter what, a long game. And so now we're kind of at that stage where we're shifting. We launched in Erewhon last year in LA. We're launching in Whole Foods in beginning of next year, and starting to make that push into the larger natural and organic grocery.
I think talk a little bit more about that. Like I think the sort of idea. And again, these rounds can raise from $100,000, or they can range from $10,000 to $5 million. But it's really like the idea is like it's a seed round. It's a proof of concept. And what you are doing, and I think what's really important and in CPG is to like understand your flaws as much as understand your strengths. So talk to me about like why are you
sometimes they're the same thing. So like
yeah, talk to me about that. What does that mean?
So we don't have any tins here, but our tins just have sticker labels, which is very like you can see the metal of the tin, and the labels are really simple. Generally, there's one label in the front that's our branded label and has what the fish is inside, and then on the back there's the nutrition and all that information. And we thought that was really cool. And it was also like, it was your initial vision, and it's get rid of all that extra packaging. That felt good to us from a sustainability standpoint, but we also just thought it looked so good, and lots of people would tell us that they like enjoyed that. And One thing about tinned seafood is that people also give it as a gift, which is so cool. It's just a nice little treat for somebody. So if it looks beautiful, that's like important. And we had this idea that it would be like on somebody's counter or in their pantry, and they would open up their cabinet and just be like, I'm happy that's in there. That looks nice. That makes it look chic in here. And so we're like, let's make it look chic. And so we love that. But we're going to be moving to paper packaging this year because it has just been hard to be out there doing the thing differently than everybody else does it. And we're not big enough to give canneries packaging that's been, what's the word for that, where you get the sort of
The
printed
tin.
on, the tin is the label?
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about lithograph.
Yeah, lithograph, big.
Like zini nuts or something?
Yeah, it's on the metal is painted.
We don't hit the minimums yet.
Yeah. We're nowhere near the minimums for that. Our dream would be, what if they were all wrapped in paper? That would be so cute. But that's only some canneries do that. And so you can see how everybody ends up sort of moving toward the same thing, which is this box. And it's actually going to be cheaper for us to make boxes than it is to make stickers and apply the stickers.
That's crazy.
And we can also do that at the canneries rather than doing it at our distribution center. We used to work with this all-women run distribution center, and they were like former art handlers, and they were so cool. And they were really good at applying the labels. And now,
The labels are applied by hand on our package.
yes,
It is
a labor of love.
expensive, labor-intensive process.
Yeah.
Because we designed it, this whole idea of how we wanted to be packaged, but couldn't find, there were no machines that
Right.
these canneries had to do that, and we were just hell-bent on making it this way. But now we need to change it in order to keep growing.
And yeah, and our new distribution center, really good for grocery, but they're not the hand labeler guys. That's just not their specialty. Love them, but on the shelves in some stores that tin looks amazing, and then sometimes we'll walk into stores and you can see if you look at our tin, it has to be stacked in a very particular way for someone to see what it is. But if somebody turns it, or if someone takes the last one and the one behind it is stacked on top of one another, all of a sudden there's no label. We're just a metal surface on the shelf. And so as we move toward grocery, which we're excited about because we want more people to be eating delicious, sustainable seafood, we're realizing, oh shoot, this isn't gonna work in a larger way. And also sometimes the tin will get a little dented, and that is actually safe. It's okay. Obviously, you got to be careful about things that are canned. You should not eat something that is open. But a little dent is okay. But sometimes people are like, oh my God, I got my tin and it's got a little dent in it. And well, that's why people put it in boxes, because that's really challenging to deal with that scale. So anyway, I forgot exactly what your original question was.
It was going towards the need to, I guess, change over time, things that when you're smaller work are sort of the allure, but over time you kind of outgrow because you need your packaging to be your marketing. I think that's interesting, for us at Farm to People. There's definitely this thing where we're able to photograph the product in a certain way. We're not selling it based on the packaging at all. It's even in some ways it's interesting, but brand will come up with a funky name and a funky packaging and it'll do really well, I'm sure, in a Shoppy shop or in a Whole Foods or whatever. But on Farm to People, someone's like, what is that? And if you just say it's mussels and escabeche sauce, and that doesn't have a funky name.
Well,
but
you're curating, and people there's a lot of trust there for people.
But also they want to know what versus the packaging selling it. It's a totally different we almost could care less about the packaging. I just want it to not break or to not dent. That's actually more important to us. We want it to arrive in great shape, but the product's already been sold. And the customer at the point of when they're home, they're going to more likely photograph the finished creation, something that they spun up, than they are at and again, it's just a different way of thinking about things, but a pop-up grocer or something like that, it's a lot of that to me. And there's some great products in there, including maybe yours or maybe Mimi Ching's as well. It's a wonderful store, but I also feel there's a lot of emphasis on the packaging, which again is so apropos to retail in general. You're on a shelf, you go into a store, there's 100 different tins of seafood. Why are they going to zoom in on Minnow? Yeah, curation is where I think we stand a little bit apart. I'm curious to go into that. You touched on it a little bit. Rising tide lifts all boats. Sorry. Certainly, more than almost any other category, I think tinned seafood is having that moment. Is there a pressure that you both feel to also make sure that the boat, but the boat doesn't tip over? Like, how do you keep up with that while also staying true to your values? People are writing about tinned seafood in a new way. Some of your competitors are getting into Costco, different big retail channels. That can also be like, and I ask this as someone who wants to see you succeed and not, grow so fast that the inventory numbers or the cash flow gets out of hand in such a way. And there are those kind of horror stories where brands grow too quickly, too fast, and then capsize. So how do you think about scale over the next couple of years as you enter a Whole Foods?
Well, I would say we've been very measured in our growth. We have the luxury of having a successful restaurant company that pays our bills, and we don't need to grow Minnow at a super fast pace. In fact,
we don't take a salary from Minnow. We've never paid ourselves from it for work on it. For 4 years, we haven't, and that is possible because we have restaurants and an incredible team that we work with there, and those are our day jobs, and Minnow is, obviously it's also our day job, but I think we've taken some of the pressure off this company in that way.
Yeah, and when we look at our competitors, and similarly, we're very friendly with many of them, and see each other at trade shows, and they come into our restaurants when they're in town, and we've had some good Zoom calls to share ideas. And I think that many of our competitors are moving into Costco and Target and Walmart and things of that nature. And never say never, but that's certainly not the trajectory we're trying to work towards. We want to be in all the big natural and organic grocery stores. We want to continue to build our direct-to-consumer, which, we have a product that is shelf-stable for 5 years and very easy to ship. So direct-to-consumer is a great avenue for us. And part of the problem with really high-quality, sustainable seafood is that it's not cheap. But in order to sell into a lot of the big box stores, like the Targets and the Walmarts and the Costcos.
And even the Whole Foods.
Yeah. We're always going to be probably the more expensive boutique brand on the shelf, but we are very comfortable being there because we know how good our product is.
Yeah, our SKUs are like $8.99 to $13.99, and there's a range in our, the $13.99 one is the salmon, but it's also the largest. It's a 6-ounce portion. Mm-hmm. So anyway, it's just to say a lot of pressure to be coming in more like $9.99, $8.99, $6.99. Those same numbers sound very familiar to us, and we're like, oh, that math doesn't make any sense for what this is at this scale at this time.
Yeah, and so I think we know our product is really good, and we're not willing to have some cheaper product or less sustainable product, or part of it doesn't taste as good, to drop our price to get into some of those places. So we're really happy at the clip that we're moving at and growing at. And I think, people will continue to, look at our brand as something that's just very high quality. And I think that'll kind of stand the test of time for us.
My hope is also that we're not only sort of competing for market share with tinned seafood, but also hopefully providing an alternative to getting fresh fish, or maybe not being able to get fresh fish. Love fresh fish, love fishermen, think people should get it, but also understand that in a busy life or a small apartment, you might not be cooking fillets of fish or whole fish at home. And so we're interested in trying to, offer, and when we think about SKUs that we want to add to the line, it's, fish that you could kind of feel like you're having a fillet of fish at home that you didn't have to cook yourself. And so when I think about the price point there, we're like, can we get quality in a tin that makes you feel like you're not comparing it to the tin of tuna, you're comparing it more to the fillet of, a beautiful white fish.
Completely. Also, if you think about it, a lunch possibility, right? if you think about $13.99 plus, a little bit of bread, a little bit of mayo, a little bit of olive oil, whatever you want, and you think about like ordering in DoorDash or something like that for lunch, like this to me feels like not sad desk lunch. It's a delicious thing. And you can pour it, it's shelf stable, so you can just like throw it in your backpack or your purse and bring it to lunch. And I feel like more people should think about it that way. It's also from a packaging sustainability standpoint, like all of the plastic forks and the plastic that you get in takeout, like this is I will sometimes do that as like my not sad desk lunch. Like I love popping open a thing of salmon and putting it on some salad or like a 4-ounce container of celery and just that, some cherry tomatoes. Like it's a great hack.
Yeah.
I think it's really just about your question about kind of how do you not capsize. It's like you got to be batshit crazy enough to want to start a company and have an idea that you could bring tin fish to the people, but also know your lane and be humble enough that we're like, we recently were at a trade show and somebody from Target came up to us and she was like, this is very exciting. And we were like, we're not ready for you.
Yeah.
And, like saying no to things, not that she was, who knows, she might have just been like being polite, but, it was like, well, that's, cool and exciting, but like, you got to know what you're ready for and when. And I think being new to this industry, it's clear to us how much we've been like learning as we're growing. We're like building the plane while flying it. And so,
aren't we all?
Yeah. And so that feels, just to try to remember that we're flying a half-built plane, and we're pretty confident in our ability to keep building planes and fly. But we also are like, one of the things that I wanted to just mention is that we're a group of 3, and so Nialls and Nick and I, and we're different. Like Nialls is the best entrepreneur. He's so good at it. And I am like a cautious HR lady who somehow ended up with...
We're also very good at it.
Yeah, thank you. But like I ended up with 2 tigers, and I just, so I'm married to one of them. Nick is our partner, and I have a lot of trust and faith in my partners, but I also, sometimes I feel like I am the voice of, let's go slower, let's think through that, and then other times I've got big ideas and they're kind of pulling me down from the sky. So that's part of it too, is that we've learned over the years of working in business together a lot about each other. So as much as we don't know about the industry, we kind of know how to bounce ideas off each other. It's been good.
On that note, and getting towards the end here, like what advice would you give to other restaurant teams considering this move into CPG? Or a move?
Well, I think Minnow is unique in this regard, and I'm not sure that I would advise people to do this in the sense that many of the brands, even the ones that you were referencing, Rao's, Carbone, Mimi Chang's, they are the branding is the name of the restaurant, and those two reinforce each other. And one of the biggest things we get is like, I had no idea Minnow was related to the restaurants,
Totally.
or vice versa. I mean, even just having different names for all of our restaurants, people oftentimes, a restaurant 2 blocks away, are like, I've never been to that restaurant, didn't know it was the same group. So I do think that there's something really powerful, and if you're building a brand, our restaurant Hart's, and if Hart's had potentially had a Hart's brand, like there is this kind of double reinforcement that occurs where someone has that brand in Arkansas and then they're visiting New York and they're like, I want to go to that restaurant. That's part of why we're also redesigning our packaging, is to also be able to have more space to tell a story, which right now there's like a very thought out tiny little line that, we put on there, and it's like the only mention of what we do in New York City with our restaurants, and we want more space to be able to talk about the canneries, the fisheries, but also like what we do and our ethos. Yeah, I think that's, for restaurant people in particular, thinking about launching a brand, is how can you leverage your existing clientele, your existing brand, your existing social media to kind of push that product that you're launching. Wasn't why we got into CPG. We got into CPG because we love these tin seafood that didn't exist here, and we certainly didn't want to start a cannery. But that, for me, is something that comes up quite often.
Interesting.
My advice to people in restaurants in general is just to focus on the team. We work with unbelievable people, and 3 of them are now partners with us in the restaurants, and like growing and building the relationships with those team members, like Hannah said, like that's the reason we've grown in so many ways, is to keep being able to grow with our people. And To get into CPG, I think, like any other venture, like if someone was like, what about getting into events or, opening up another store location, like all of that rests. And I think it also gets back to and answers your question about, how do you make sure you don't capsize? Like, how do you make sure you're building a good business? I think it's the people.
Yeah. Last question,
Yeah.
and it's one that we've sort of asked, in prior conversations, but I think it's a really interesting one. And we didn't probably talk enough about the incredible sourcing that you do at your restaurants. Like we focus so much on Minnow, but like I think every restaurant you go to, every restaurant that you have that I've been to, you're calling out the farms, you're calling out like that these Jimmy Nardellos are from this place or that this ricotta is this, and your servers are so knowledgeable about from the wine to the food, and that's, I think, incredible. So going to the question about, obviously, I think the answer is a little bit your personal ethos around food shines through your restaurants, but talk a little bit about your personal ethos. What does that look like in your personal lives? And because we're farm to people, like how do you see farm to people sort of like fitting into this food system and I guess landscape of other retailers? And yeah.
I think it really pulls together a lot of what we've been talking about tonight, but we are stewards. We're one point in a many-spoked wheel. We have the incredible privilege and joy of getting to make spaces where people come and get to eat and be themselves and be seen and cared for. We curate that moment, and that could be curating the music of the night. It would be curating like how bright it is and exactly where we want the lights to be, low. Like it could be curating, the menu, and we basically want to build institutions. That's our ethos. So the three of us come from different areas of the restaurant world, and so we weren't like three somms who were like, I really want to make this like temple for wine, or like three chefs. And so when we got together early on, we were like, went to a bar and sat down and said like, what are we doing together? And we were like, we actually care a lot about each other and want to keep working together for a long time, and we really care about the way it feels. So want it to feel good to work together, not every day, not all the time, like, it's human, work is hard, work is called work for a reason, but want it to feel good, we want it to last. So we tell our team like the things that are most important to us are like, the music and the food and the service and the wine and beverages, like we want all of them to be excellent, but we really want to try to just embody like warmth and respect in being with each other every day. And if we are trying to do that together over time, that, that'll end up with the right stuff. And so we feel the same way about our vendors. We have really long relationships. These are people that we worked with for the last 15, 20 years. We just up at a farm on Sunday, upstate. Like, that's the way this whole thing works for us. It's personal, it's political, it's professional, and we hope we get to do it for a long time.
Awesome. Anything to add?
That's perfect.
It was perfect. It was perfect. On that note, thank you so much, Leah. Thank you, Nialls. It's amazing what you've built, and excited. I can't wait to see you both continue to grow in both worlds. And I think they do feed off each other. And we do feel anytime we come into your restaurants that hospitality, that hug. And so it's a testament to, I didn't know the two of you, but I can see now your vision and your personalities in all of the spaces. So thank you for creating that. And thank you for being here to listen to them.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Know Your Food, a podcast from Farm to People. If today's conversation got you thinking differently about what's on your plate or where it comes from, we'd love if you shared this episode with a friend or left us a review. It helps more people discover the folks reimagining the future of food from the ground up. And if you're in the New York tri-state area, you can shop from our network of small, regenerative, independent farms and makers at farmtopeople.com, and stay in the loop by signing up for our newsletter or joining us on Instagram at farmtopeople. Until next time, eat well and know your food.